This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, Heather, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to another Sports Catastrophe on this date. And on this day, November the 4th, in the year 1987, the NBA said, we are going to expand again. We're going to go find some new cities to do NBA teams. And based on the 80s boom of basketball, we're going to add more teams. So the NBA was at their peak. It was just hard to believe, but anyway. 23 teams in the NBA were contesting the 87-88 season. But because of how dominant basketball was on the national scene in the U.S., with Michael Jordan coming through, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and the old guard of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, among other players, people were ready to accept basketball as pretty much a very good sport. I mean, America really isn't much into hockey. And of course, baseball seen a bit of a spike in high graciousness. And then you got yourself football, which during this time in 1987 was still at a crossroads. They had that 3-week replacement players era that saw, replacement teams be there. Like, they played the games that counted, but still. Anyway, the NBA granted expansion franchises to 4 teams, but they won't be all playing all at once. The 4 teams would be spread out over 2 seasons. For the upcoming 88-89 season, it would be the Charlotte Hornets and the Miami Heat who would get their turn to play basketball. And then in 89-90, it would be the Timberwolves and the Magic who would get it. So it was strange how, it's like these 4 franchises from 4 different parts of America. What do you think about that? So let's start with the first 2 teams that were slated for expansion, Miami and Charlotte. Charlotte was mostly known for its college basketball theatrics with NC State, UNC, and Duke even for that matter, bring basketball greatness Tobacco Road. So it was kind of strange because they would try to barge into college basketball territory where college basketball was a big godsend, if you will. But the fact of the matter is that Charlotte got their team. They were actually named the Charlotte Spirit. However, the name changed to the Charlotte Hornets. So, Charlotte grew weary of their team. Well, they had growing pains, but in 93, they actually won a playoff round, taking down the Boston Celtics. And then in 1993, they did it. The Hornets were decent in the mid-90s, the late 90s, early 2000s. But they couldn't get it over that hump and get to the conference finals. Charlotte started losing interest in their team, and the team moved from Charlotte to New Orleans. Although, for most of their New Orleans life, they had to play in Oklahoma City as well because of Hurricane Katrina. But New Orleans still had the team, and they were renamed the Pelicans in 2014. The strange thing was that the NBA allowed the New Orleans Pelicans to be called a quote-unquote expansion team, and that Charlotte, in 2004, they got their basketball team back with the Bobcats. Actually changed from Bobcats back to the Hornets, and they took all the Charlotte Hornets stuff from the Hornets Pelicans franchise. Made it their own. So anyway, the Charlotte Hornets are your friends. And they were a decent team. They had Kemba Walker for a while, but unfortunately, though, he's not playing for them anymore. Anyway, The second team was the Miami Heat. Miami seemed destined to get a sports team. I mean, the baseball team wouldn't come till 93. The football team, well, the Dolphins were kings of Miami. And hockey didn't come to Miami until 93 as well. But the fact is, basketball was huge down in Florida, in a way. And Miami wanted to capitalize on it. I know Dolphin fans were not really that happy that they have to share the Miami sports team with the Heat. Well, you got the Hurricanes too, but in college basketball, the Canes weren't that good. College football, that's a different story. But yeah, Miami would get the team called the Heat, and they suffered through, I believe, the longest losing streak by an expansion team. They were 0-15 to start their expansion careers, which was kind of awkward and all that. Not even the Raptors or Grizzlies did that. In fact, I think the Grizzlies started off like 2-1 or 2-0. Can't remember. But yeah, the Raptors and Grizzlies won their first games compared to Miami. But the Heat were a patchwork team. But by the mid 90s, they started to gel with Glenn Rice and Alonzo Mourning being heroes. Miami choked at the 99 playoffs when they could have taken out the New York Knicks in the first round, but they lost the last 3 games. Miami had some great offense and all that. They wouldn't get a title until 2006 when Shaq came over to Miami after basically being pushed out by Kobe's politics. So the Heat won the title, and then, they drafted Dwayne Wade in that famous 2003 draft, and then they ended up getting Chris Bosh and LeBron James, and Miami were just good in the 2010s, but then LeBron went back to Cleveland. Bosh had to retire because of injury, and Dwayne Wade was still there. But man, Miami was a great city. And then now the teams from 89-90. So the Timberwolves. It was like Minnesota having a basketball team? Why would you put a team in the northern United States? Well, the joke's on you. If you don't know your NBA history, I'm going to teach you some NBA history. Minneapolis actually had an NBA team called the Lakers. That's right. The Lakers were not always in Los Angeles. They were in Minnesota. And the Minneapolis Lakers were dominant in the 1950s. Yeah, they had box office problems near the end, but hey, you know what? They were dominant. 5 league titles? Can you believe it? George Mikan, Fern Mickelson, Jim Pollard, Happy Hairston, I guess. That was a pretty good team. Anyway, the LA Lakers would come into existence in 1960. Like, Minneapolis would move to Los Angeles and be still called the Lakers, even though that there's no fresh water in Los Angeles. Minneapolis, land of 10,000 lakes. Minnesota would suffer. I mean, they had a dominant team, almost too dominant, and then they had to wait so many years for an expansion team to come in. The Timberwolves weren't always that good. I mean, nowadays they're decent and all that, but Minnesota had growing pains, just like everyone else. But they had Kevin Garnett, Wally Serbiak, Sam Mitchell, Sam Cassell, Tom Gugliotta. The Timberwolves were pretty good. 2004, they got to the conference finals before losing to their spiritual predecessors, the LA Lakers. Yeah, Minnesota's got Karl Anthony Towns, so good on them. And then, of course, the Orlando Magic. Strange how you would put 2 cities in Florida with a team. Right off the bat. But Orlando got the team. The Orlando Magic, were kind of close to Disney World. That's why they call it the Magic. And they had some growing pains. They had some good guys. Dennis Scott came in. And Scott Skiles. But then a 7'1" center from LSU came in. First overall pick in 92, and that was Shaq. Shaq almost got Orlando to the NBA playoffs before losing by just 1 game. And in 93, luck of the draw, Orlando gets the #1 ping pong ball and drafts Chris Webber. But they trade him away to Golden State for Golden State's pick, which was Penny Hardaway. So Orlando could have had Chris Webber, but it actually was a good move. Penny Hardaway was a pretty decent player. With him and Shaq and Nick Anderson and Dennis Scott, Orlando looked good. They even got to the 95 NBA Finals in one of the 2 years that MJ didn't play in the 90s. They got to the final, It looked like they were going to steamroll over the defending champion Houston Rockets, who were struggling, but other way around, Houston swept Orlando. Orlando would have problems as Shaq would leave for the money and Los Angeles. And Orlando limped along. Penny Hardaway got hurt. Grant Hill got hurt. Tracy McGrady came over from the Raptors. He was basically Orlando personified, but the team would struggle. They've done some decent stuff, but not too recently. But anyway, that's all I've got for this topic. I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.